First of all, what is spiritual bypassing? I want to start with a definition. It was first coined by the psychologist John Wellwood in 1984, and he defined it as using spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing uncomfortable life issues, unresolved emotional wounds, or psychological developmental stages. Okay? So really, it is an ego defense response, right? It's the way that we will really avoid feeling uncomfortable, right? We will avoid feeling uncomfortable. The ego will avoid feeling uncomfortable at all costs, really, right? And so in the spiritual community, especially, we see this because there is that it's like escapism to use these ideas and concepts to avoid and bypass the difficult but necessary emotional healing, or what's also called shadow healing, and those important psychological developmental stages, right? Before I dive in, I feel like I want to say that I want to acknowledge that this is going to be triggering for some of you, right? It's going to be triggering for some of you. It's triggering for me. And so just keep on breathing, right? And this isn't a personal attack, okay? So the 5 most common spiritual bypasses are, number 1, the love and light bypass. Who's familiar with this one, right? Love and light, good vibes only. Using that concept to as forced optimism to focus only on the positive, right? This dismisses any valid emotions that you might be feeling. It also shows potentially a fear or resistance to anger, right? An unwillingness or inability to deal with anger. And then the other thing that happens with this love and light bypass is things being said like, don't give energy to that being sadness, heartbreak, disappointment, right? Don't give energy to that or you'll just manifest more of it, right? Have you ever been around someone who's maybe said that? Maybe you have said that. And this is why I'm saying you might feel triggered by some of this. And if you've done it, if you used to do this, thank you for owning that. It's okay, right? It seems to be just like it's a stage along the path where we think, oh, I need to just focus on the positive, focus on the light, focus on what I'm wanting to create. Because if I turn towards my sadness, if I turn towards my anger, my heartbreak, or whatever it is, there's a fear that maybe that will consume you again. That's exactly right. This is how we learn. So the problem with this love and light bypass is that, well, one, it does show just an immaturity and understanding of the complexity of human nature and also of the laws of the universe, right? Like all of that focus on just the law of attraction while ignoring all the other laws of the universe. But it also it can be used for victim blaming. Like victim blaming, if someone, manifests something negative, well, they created it, right? Number 2, the gifted victim bypass. So this is just another way of not taking responsibility. The gifted victim faults other people, or more often their own spiritual gifts, as the reason that they are unhappy or unable to function in society, or anything like that, that they are a victim to their own gifts. I'm sorry to say, but empaths, or people that believe that they're empaths are often guilty of this. And again, it's just another way that we bypass or avoid taking responsibility for ourselves, for our lives, for the way that we are in the world. And it's not just empaths. People can use many different labels to actually use as an excuse to that they are a victim of their gifts, like saying, oh, well, I have such a hard time because I'm clairvoyant, or I'm clairsentient, or I'm a psychic medium, or I'm a starseed, or I'm an indigo child, or any other label. And I want to be clear, you're more than welcome to use these labels to describe yourself. They are maybe entirely appropriate, but it's when you're using that as an excuse, as you being a victim to your own spiritual gifts, your own psychic gifts, using your being a victim to your own gifts to excuse self-destructive behavior. And again, I'm not saying that it isn't true. I certainly would imagine that empaths have a very hard time in certain situations, but don't let yourself be a victim to your own gifts. Right? The third most common spiritual bypass that I see is the protector bypass. The protector bypass. Again, this is shirking our own self-responsibility by putting faith in an outside source or an outside being for our own protection or for what will save us. Examples of the protector could be Jesus, right? A guardian angel, another deity, or even a guru or teacher, like someone else. And again, you can see that this is a way that we bypass our own self-responsibility or our own ability to make choices by placing so much faith in this outside source of the protector. I don't know if you saw this meme that started going around last year in the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, but it was Jesus speaking to this woman saying, I don't remember her name in the meme, but it was like, Claire, it's me, Jesus. Yes, I'll do my best to protect you, but you still got to wash your hands. Right? And it just made me laugh because it's so true. Like we can of course still have faith in a higher power, an ascended master, whatever it is, but not to the exclusion of also taking care of ourselves, protecting ourselves, using common sense or whatever it is, right? Okay, number 4. And again, I know this one's really going to trigger some of you. And I'm guilty of this one too. The astrology bypass. The astrology bypass. This is a way that we spiritually bypass by blaming the stars, blaming Mercury retrograde, blaming planetary transits as the reason why something isn't happening or the reason why you're not going to do something. So again, I hope by now you're starting to see a theme in these, that it's often when we are spiritually bypassing, we are looking outside of ourselves for answers or looking to outside sources to guide us. And with this astrology bypass, it's to the point of allowing it to limit or dictate your actions, right? Instead of tapping into and trusting our inner wisdom, our ability to make decisions, really our ability to handle whatever comes our way. Exactly right. Radical self-responsibility. Now, again, I'm owning these as much as I'm sharing them, right? Like, I will still advise my clients to not plan a very, tech heavy launch event during a Mercury retrograde. Like, I just think best to avoid it if you can. But do you maybe know someone, or do you see yourself in this, of using astrology as a bypass or a way to avoid doing things, or using it as an excuse? So that one, I mean, it's fun to blame Mercury retrograde to a certain extent, but are you really letting it control your life? I hope not, because it happens 3 or 4 times a year for 3 weeks each time. Right? We can't give so much of our power away, right? Okay, I'm glad you're laughing with me. Laughter is good medicine to break up these these patterns. All right, and the fifth and final, most common spiritual bypass is the shadow healing bypass. This is using the spiritual understanding that our wounded patterns aren't real to avoid feeling and to bypass or avoid the shadow healing at all. Now, this shadow healing bypass really stems from a belief that truly spiritual people don't experience anger or sadness or doubt, right? And often this is an unconscious belief, right? And that's part of shadow work, is bringing the unconscious into the conscious. So if we have a deep-seated belief that truly spiritual people wouldn't have these problems that I'm having, when we're in our when we're in our humanness, then we use it as an excuse to sidestep. This is really the glorification of the saint ideal, right? It's the glorification of the saint ideal, and this is the spiritual bypass that I caught myself in about 3 weeks ago. That motivated this whole talk, that I realized, oh my goodness, here I am doing it. It's clearly up for me. And so I want to share this. So what had happened? My own doubt came up, a bit of imposter syndrome, certainly my shadow of over responsibility. And I was like, I had a day and a night and into the next day where I was feeling really racked with this anxiety and doubt. And again, really like feeling over responsible. And yet I wasn't letting myself fully feel it, because whenever I would catch myself in it, I'd say, okay, calm down, Flora. You know that that's not real. It's just your shadow patterning. Like, don't doubt yourself. You don't need to be, you're not completely over responsible. Like, I was talking myself out of really letting myself feel it. So the very next day, when I realized what I'd been doing, that I was avoiding, I was sidestepping that shadow healing by using my spiritual practices, my spiritual awareness to be like, that's not real. That's just my shadow. So I realized that I was bypassing, and I faced into it. I dared to really let myself feel what I was fearing. And in that way, I was able to move through it much quicker than if I'd kept denying it. This is so common. If you see yourself in one or two or even all of them, it's okay. I witness you and honor you and recognizing that for yourself. And again, I just want to say, don't use this now to punish yourself or judge yourself more, or shoulding on yourself, because it's simply about bringing it into more awareness. Okay, so 5 steps that we can take to shift these patterns and to heal our tendency towards these spiritual bypasses are, number one, it's what you're doing right now, being open and humble and willing to admit that you're doing it, right? It's that key first step. So being open-minded, humbling yourself, and being willing to admit to yourself that you've been doing it, right? It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay if you see now. Even like being so harshly judgmental of our past self is just another form of shoulding on ourselves, because in the quantum nature of time, all time is now. So don't spend your energy being hard on your past self for what you did do or what you didn't know, right? So a couple questions that you can continue to ask yourself if you're wondering if you're in a bypass pattern are, what am I avoiding? That's what I had to ask myself, like I said, a few weeks ago. So what am I avoiding? Oh, I'm avoiding really feeling this doubt. I'm avoiding feeling this sense of over responsibility. I'm avoiding feeling it. So that's the first question to ask yourself. You can journal on it or take it into meditation. What am I avoiding? Another great question is, am I giving away or leaking my power to this? Action number 2 is to obviously embrace shadow work, right? To allow yourself to feel your pain, to face the shadow. Truly, that's what brings us into integration. That's what brings us into the wholeness that we're seeking, is by facing it, not avoiding it. A lot of spiritual people think that once they finally transcend their shadow, transcend their humanity, and be only in the light and their divinity, then all that heavier, difficult, or negative, experiences or emotions will just go away. Oh, then I'll clear my karma. Oh, then I won't, struggle with anxiety anymore. Then I won't be tempted by my anger anymore, whatever it is. And that's not actually true. How we do transcend is through integration of the light and the shadow. So we have to be willing to do this shadow work. And maybe it's because I'm a Scorpio. I don't know, but I actually have really come into this work from the shadow work side. So y'all will know for the past 5 years that shadow work has been a foundation of the spiritual practices and that I share. And so it just feels more balanced to me, right? We need shadow work and light work. So allow yourself to feel it. You move through it faster when you feel it instead of avoiding it, right? So action step number 3, the third thing that you can do to redirect and repattern yourself, might be a little bit difficult for some of you, but to ask for honest, loving feedback from someone else. Only someone that you trust, right? Only someone that you trust if it's a friend or a family member, not someone that you have a difficult or complicated relationship with, right? It may need to be a more objective or professional person, or to seek support in some way, like a women's circle, or some kind of activity or group that explicitly will help you to see your own blind spots, right? That's why we need each other, right? I rely on my soul sisters to help me see my blind spots, help me see what I'm not seeing, and to share that and to have those discussions in a way that are kind and loving, holding me still in my wholeness, And so that's why it's so important to choose the right person if you're going to ask for honest and loving feedback, to say, hey, what am I not seeing about this situation? Or why am I stuck in this pattern? Why am I so harshly triggered by this situation? Some of my closest friends lately have been getting voice texts for me because I'm like, why? I am so triggered by this. Can you help me, in just processing this and seeing what it is? So that's the third step, is to get the support in some way. Number 4, the fourth action that you can take is to paint, write, dance, or play it out. Dare to express your shadow through art. And this isn't necessarily art that will turn into anything that anyone else will see, right? But to dare to let yourself express your shadow through some kind of art, writing, painting, dancing, and not judging your creative process while you're in it. This is free flow, right? This is for your healing. Maybe you'll turn around and sell this art. Maybe you'll turn around and share this poem that you wrote, or a song that you wrote, or art that you did with someone else. But don't worry about that in the moment, right? Yeah, collage. That's another great way to do it too. But find some creative outlet to allow yourself a creative way to express your shadow, to get it out. To let it be. Give your shadow some expression, especially if you're someone that has really been conditioned to suppress the shadow. So instead of suppress, express. And number 5, finally, the fifth way, action that you can take is really around the collective shadow healing that we as spiritual women want to contribute to, is to expand your circle to include people with different lived experiences. So I'm talking about reading books, listening to podcasts, watching films, listening and learning from people different than you, whether that's women of color, people of color, LGBTQ, people from developing countries, people with different disabilities, expanding who you're listening to, who you're learning from. This is really essential for us to continue to challenge our own privileges and to be actively engaged in our own shadow healing and how it connects to the collective shadow healing that we are a part of. And certainly this last year and a half, the world has been thrust into a collective shadow healing. And there's been a lot of upheaval. There's been a lot of challenges, a lot of dark night of the soul. And yet we can already see, wow, we are living in a very different world than we were at the start of last year. And it's because, from my perspective anyway, this pandemic has challenged us to face a shadow and to look at what we will no longer stand for, right? So continually seek to uncover your biases, right? Our unconscious biases, our unconscious prejudices, by expanding our circle of who we listen to, who we learn from. Make sure that there's diversity there, and not just racial diversity, although that's very important. But like I said, other lived experiences, people from different countries, looking at ableism, different disabilities, just different lifestyles. And especially if you have a business or if you have any kind of platform, think about how can you speak up? How can you speak up about some of these issues? How can you signal boost some other people that you want to support? That's a neat expression. Like when we reshare a post, or we, you know, if we have a platform and we partner or collaborate with someone, that's signal boosting. So who or what do you want to signal boost in your world? And even if you don't consider yourself having a platform, if you're not an entrepreneur, if you have a social media profile, your posts or what you reshare is what you are pushing out into the world. So be very conscious and discerning of what it is that you are putting out there, right? Before you reshare, you know, so-called news articles, you probably want to do some fact checking. Before you, but certainly I'll just speak for me, before I partner or collaborate with anyone, I want to know that our values are in alignment. There's so many different ways that we can just unconsciously get, in our own bias, right? And again, don't judge yourself. Don't use that to criticize. Once your eyes are open to something, then you know better and you do better. Now to recap those 5 action steps that you can take. The first one is to be open, humble, and willing to admit that that you have been spiritual bypassing, you know, to recognize your own bypass pattern. Number 2 is to embrace shadow work, right? Embrace shadow work and to allow yourself to feel your pain. And if anyone wants to speak with me more directly or has more questions about, you know, shadow healing and how to start that, please reach out or comment below. I'm more than happy to provide some resources or to just have a conversation. Number 3, asking for honest and loving feedback from someone in your life, having that conversation, someone that you trust, you know, not someone who you think might just like cut you down, tear you down, or to get the support of a group or a class or a women's circle where you can engage in this healing and the continual uncovering of all the layers around this. Number 4, using art or some form of creative expression to give expression to your shadow. So through painting, writing, dancing, something to let yourself express your shadow as healing, just for your own healing, your own catharsis. And number 5 is to expand your circle, expand who you're listening to, who you're learning from, so that there's diversity in their lived experiences and you are exposed to a diversity of perspectives, so that really contributes to the collective shadow healing that this world is in right now. Well, thank you so much. Yes, this is consciousness work. And in spiritual work or consciousness work, there's the light and the shadow. And it's not to divide it into good or bad. That's the other thing. I love the Rumi quote that says, beyond, I'm gonna butcher it, but that Rumi quote that says, beyond the chaos of right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there. Beyond duality, beyond right and wrong, that is the space that we want to be in. And our openness and our willingness to embrace all of who we are and our humanity and our divinity together, our light and our shadow. Our light and our shadow together completes the great work. Beautiful. Thank you so much, all of you, for listening in, tuning in. I would love to also know if which one of those action steps you feel really inspired to take or to focus on more, something that you've already been doing, if that's something that you want to share. And as always, feel free to reach out to me or tag me in a comment if you want to deepen with this conversation. Thank you so much for doing this work, the light work and the shadow work, and embracing all of it so that we can be more integrous and we can truly be more whole, divine humans. Blessed be, sisters. Mwah, mwah.